Can announce it.
Okay, we are now broadcasting, and we will begin the program in 1 minute to give everyone a chance to get on.
Bounces, whatever.
Okay, let's begin. Thank you everyone for joining us. We hope that you will find this program rewarding. We will have a number of panelists and go through some discussions of issues that we are each facing in giving our Daf Yomi Shiurim. The function of this meeting was to really help mechazek each one of us, Ishal Re'eu Amar Chazak, and in order to do that, we can share some of the experiences we had. We will have a few questions at the end and be able to throw them to the panelists to get their opinions. And I will give an introduction to the program and the panelists after we hear from Rabbi Yisrael Reisman. We have asked him to address us. He is under a bit of a time constraint, so he's going to be going first. And it's now a great kavod for us to be addressed by Rabbi Yisrael Reisman. Rabbi Yisrael?
Yes, shalom to everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk to you, especially when everybody is learning Masechta Shabbos, and I believe coming very soon to the 7th parak. I have a pet peeve about Bnei Torah, Talmidei Chachamim, and Hilchos Shabbos, and I'd like to share it with you. Once upon a time, we used to learn the sugyas of Davar She'eino Miskavin and Ksubis in the first parak before the yeshivas, in their constant quest to keep the Bnei Torah ignorant, decided to skip those sugyas. The point I want to make is the following. There are two yisodos that confuse people, whether they're learning Daf Yomi or they're learning Bi'iyun, Davar She'eino Miskavin. There are 2 points that confuse people, and I beg those who are giving shiurim to find a short expression, encapsulated expression for the following 2 nakudas. One, the sugyas of Davar She'eino Miskavin and Malachas She'ein Tzricha L'Gufa throughout the Masechta. People who are learning Davar She'eino Miskavin, Malachas She'ein Tzricha L'Gufa for weeks in yeshiva, and then are asked, tell me in 1 sentence, what's the difference between a Davar She'eino Miskavin and Malachas She'ein Tzricha L'Gufa? They start with Pulpulim, with the Reb Chaim, with the Aruch, and everything. I beg you, teach people the 1 sentence. Davar She'eino Miskavin is when you're not miskavin for the Maisa. Malachas She'ein Tzricha L'Gufa is when you're not mechavim for the Tachlis. Just that. A Davar She'eino Miskavin, which Reb Shimon holds as mutar l'chatchila, Reb Yehuda holds as aser, is when you're not miskavin for the Maisa. You're dragging a bench, and you're not mechavim for the Maisa of chafira, of digging a charitz. That's Davar She'eino Miskavin. Malachas She'ein Tzricha L'Gufa, you are mechavim for the Maisa, but you're not mechavim for the Tachlis, for the purpose. You're digging a hole, vein sarach al afra, but not for the Tachlis of having a hole, for the Tachlis of having the dirt. That is the difference. That's why Taisus says later in Perek Habayna, every Davar She'eino Miskavin is also a Malach She'ein Tzricha L'Gufa. Davar She'eino Miskavin, you're not mechavim for the Maisa, so you're also not mechavim for the Tachlis. Because you're not mechavim to make a hole at all, you're certainly not mechavim for the Tachlis of the hole. So that is the Yisayid HaDavar. Davar She'eino Miskavin, you're not miskavin for the Maisa, Malach she'et tzricha l'gufa, you're not mechavim for the tachlis. When I gave Shiur and Ksubis on these sugyas, every day when I started Shiur, I said, what's Davar She'ein Miskavin? What's Malach she'et tzricha l'gufa? And I wanted to one sentence. And after 2 weeks, someone asked me, why am I keeping on doing it? I told him, go to some of the Lamdonim in the Beis Medrash and ask them if they could tell you in one sentence the difference between the two. Davar she'ein miskavin, you're not mechavim for the ma'isa. Malach she'et tzricha l'gufa, you're not mechavim for the tachlis. That's like I said, it's a pet peeve I have. People don't have a short explanation of Davar she'ein miskavin, malach she'et tzricha l'gufa. Number 2, in the beginning of the 7th parak, you have the sugyas of misasek. Here, again, there's a basic lack of yediyah, l'mashal, of when someone is chayiv a karban chatos. Many people think that since it happens lo'aleinu, but it happens on Shabbos, people do malacha by mistake, that they're going to be chayiv a karban chatos. I don't know if in my whole life I ever did anything in Melechas Shabbos that's chayiv a chatos. You're only chayiv a chatos if you forgot it's Shabbos, or if you forgot that malachis are aser, or that this particular malach is aser, you need shichas Shabbos, or shichas malacha. If someone is getting dressed in the morning, and his hand sticks out his hand into his sleeve and turns off or on a light, that's not chayiv a carbon, even if turning on a light is deraisa. That is called misasek. And again, the difference between shaygeg and misasek is lost on people who are Isaac in Hilchos Shabbos, who finish the Masechta. They lose this nekuda of difference. A shaygeg is someone who forgot shichas Shabbos, shichas malacha. Misasek is when you don't forget anything. You know it's Shabbos, you know malacha is aser, and by mistake you're doing something else. As a matter of fact, if someone puts on his jacket and goes to shul, and he has money in his pocket, he has something chashuv in his pocket, he's not chayiv v'chatos. He's a misasek. He's a misasek. Someone once asked the Brisker Rav if he has to bring a chatos. He went to shul, he was carrying. He said, no, misasek, you weren't chayiv, you didn't do Melechas Shabbos. You're over under the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan said you have to check your pockets every Shabbos. That you were over. But that you're over every week if you don't check. But there's something there or not. You're a misasek. You meant to walk not carrying, and you're walking carrying. So as I said, these are my 2 pet peeves about the ignorance of basic Yisaidos in Hilchos Shabbos. To be able to explain what's a shaygeg, that's chayiv a carbon, and what is misasek. Misasek is, according to most, there's a famous machlokes Rabbi Akiva and Nesivis about the Gedarim. But misasek is not, you're not even Issa Rabbanan by misasek. Rabbanan couldn't possibly make a gzeira that you shouldn't do something that you're not aware you do. Not just such a gzeira. That's the pashtus. You have Rabbi Yashiv's Ha'aris on Masechta Shabbos. He has his own mahalach in this whole thing. If it is an Issa D'Rabbanan, it's not an Issa D'Rabbanan, but it's not negated to my discussion. My point is, make clear to people what's a Davar she'ein miskavin, what's a malach she'et tzricha l'gufa. Make clear to people what's misasek and what's a shaygeg on Shabbos. The 2 basic yediyas coming up in the 7th parak, the sugya machlokes Rav and Abaye about what a misasek is, and they're very basic yediyas going in. Now, divrei chizuk usually means I have to say a word also. I want to point out to you, Reb Shimon is the makel, both by Davar she'ein miskavin. He holds Davar she'ein miskavin is mutter, and by malach she'et tzricha l'gufa. He holds malach she'et tzricha l'gufa is potter. Malach she'et tzricha l'gufa, the machlokes is chayiv or potter. Reb Yehuda, Reb Shimon is makel. Davar she'ein miskavin, Reb Yehuda, Reb Shimon argue if it's Aser or Mutter. And Reb Shimon is the Mekel by Davar Sheina Miskaven. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai's yahrzeit is coming up on Lag BaOmer. I once saw in the Klichemda, I believe it was in the Klichemda, I think B'Shem the Admor Melexander. He said, why in Shas, Reb Shimon is almost always the Mekel? Reb Shimon generally, not always, but generally is the Mekel in Shas. And the Zayar is full of Chumris. There's a lot of things where he's a Chumris and on Hagas Ha'adam. So he said the side of Reb Shimon is that Dover She'enai Miskaven is Mutter. It's not only in Shabbos. I was recently learning Mishnayos Machshirin. In the first parak of Machshirin, the Mishnah has a case where a person has seeds in the palm of his hands, and he licks his finger, touches the seeds, and that's how he's eating it. Licking his finger, this is pre-corona when you're allowed to lick your finger, and touching the seeds and eating that way. So he's making the seeds wet with the saliva from his mouth. So the Mishnah says he's machshel l'kabel tumah. Zok Reb Shimon, no, it's a davar she'eino miskaven. He's not mechaven to make the seeds that remain in his hand to be wet. So Nachamal, it's a case where Reb Shimon holds davar she'eino miskaven is mutter. B'chol ha'Torah kula is the expression he uses. Reb Shimon holds the ikar is toli in kavana. In Shas, we talk about Averis, Isurim. Reb Shimon's a mekel. He holds the ikar is toli in kavana. Oh, you're not mechavin. It's a p'tor, or it's not mochshel l'kabel tum. But the Zohar talks about Maaseh mitzvah, about anhagen, a person who wants to achieve perfection, who wants to grow. There, Reb Shimon l'shitasai, those davar she'eino miskaven is nothing. It's not an aveira. But when it comes to kiyumei mitzvah, also you have to be a mechavin. You have to be a mechavin. The whole Kabbalah, the whole idea of Torah HaKabbalah is called Kavanis. Kavanis Ha'ari. All the Kavanis in the Shem Hashem, all the Kavanis in the Kiyam Mitzvah, all Kavanis. So that's Reb Shimon's Shita. I can't say throughout Shas. Reb Shimon is mentioned hundreds of times. But it's a consistent Shita of Reb Shimon that things are totally b'kavana. Rav Gedalia Shiur once said that the 49 days of Sfira are divided into three parts. The first third, the second third, and the last third, which starts with Lag BaOmer. And each third is connected one of the three amudim of the world. The Olam Oimed, the Olam stands, Shoshet Dvarim Olam Oimed, Torah Avodah Gemilas Chasadim. So he said the first third includes a week of Pesach. It's Avodah. It's the time when Yidden are in the Beis Hamikdash. That's the first third, the first 16 or 17 days of Sfira. The next 16 or 17 days are Chesed. It includes Pesach Sheni, which is the biggest Chesed, the mitzvah that you missed and you can make up. It's Chesed. And the third third of Sfira, starting from Lag BaOmer, is Keneged Kabbalas HaTorah, is Torah. Is Torah. So whatever the Talmidei Rebbe Kiva were missing, it was in the first two thirds of Sfira. And the last third of Sfira, which is Torah, it was not a time that the Talmidei Rebbe Kiva would die, because when it's a Zman of Torah, they had the kaiches and the proper kaiches in Torah. So from Lag BaOmer and on, Pasku, it ended, whatever the Magefa was, it couldn't take place after Lag BaOmer. Because that's the third, that's Torah. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai's Yom Tif is at the beginning of the last third. He was Megalatas, the Sisrei Torah, the Kavanas HaTorah, the Oimek HaTorah, and that starts from here on. And so, as the Daf Yomi is one of the areas of Torah that's as stable, the Daf keeps on going. In the yeshivas, they have to switch to easier limudim, to shorter sidarim. But Daf Yomi, that's It's solid. It doesn't stop for anything. It keeps on going. I hope you should all be nischazik in finding ways to increase the limud Torah, especially Masechta Shabbos. Masechta Shabbos, the second half of Masechta Shabbos, from Perek HaZorik and on, is like butter. It goes smoothly. The first half is a little more difficult to teach, a lot of complicated sugyas and digressions, the sugyas of Tumah and Tahara. But Chazak for this Chazek. And as I said at the outset, try to share the Yesaidas. The Yomi goes quickly. But the Yesaidas that repeat themselves, review it, chazer it. If people have a kinyan in Yesaidas, they have a geschmack. So Ashreichem, I hope the Atzlacha of the Daf Yomi should shine, especially during these days, and it should continue to go well. Ashreichem, and I mispal to the Rabbeinu Shalom, by the time you get to Erevin, you certainly need to have everybody in a room and being able to tumble over what's happening. Reb Gedalia, our base medrash waits for you to resume your Daf Yomi. I think your blackboard, or I think your whiteboard is waiting for you for Erevin. It's Hashem, and we look forward to seeing everybody back. It's Hashem. I hope that we should all be zeichet to grow from this period of time. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with all of you, Malamdim, who continue to be Malamdei Torah La'am Yisrael. Yashakayach.
Yashakayach. Thank you, Rabbi Reisman, for the Divrei Chizuk and for the Divrei Torah. What I would like to say, first of all, is Baruch Hashem, our Daf Yomi has continued. But before we get into that discussion, what I would like to do is do Poiskim B'chvoi Dachsanya. Dachsanya is the Torah Projects Division at the Daf Yomi Commission of Agudas Yisrael. And I'd like to especially thank Elio Simcha Bamberger and Avram Nissen Pearl and Leivish Becker, who not only for this, but they've supported this effort very strongly. And in addition to that, they've really supported a lot of the things that are going on. We've had a Yarchei Kala, and I want to especially thank my co-chair, Rav Shlomo Gottesman, who has been running this Yarchei Kala for the last number of weeks, and it's had a tremendous turnout of people. Everybody, of course, is invited to join, to different speakers every day. Tremendous level of chizuk that has come out of that. I would also like to thank and say and recognize the people from Kihem Chayenu, that they've been also offering things along this period of time to help increase Limud Torah, doing a great job, especially Shai Markowitz and the rest of his team. Now, we have been going through times that none of us have ever experienced before, and as Hashem, we will not necessarily experience again. It's been difficult, but Baruch Hashem, I can say, and I'll just share my own little experience for a moment. We started from the day after, as I give the shiur in Rabbi Reisman Shul in the morning. When we were there the last time and said that this is the last shiur that's going to be given here now. We were doing social distancing, but that was obviously not enough. And that base medrash meant most of the base Badei Midrashim in Flatbush and everywhere have closed down. So we started doing this, and within the first day we started using it. I used a tool that is similar to Zoom. Zoom is at least as good as we see right now. I use a tool called GoToMeeting because that's what I used in business. And Baruch Hashem, we didn't miss a single day. We're up to date. The only change that happened is that instead of learning every day from 7:05 till a little after 8, we now learn from 7:30 till 9 o'clock. Some people couldn't make it, but mostly everybody from the shiur is there. And so we're learning an hour and a half instead of necessarily an hour. And we're doing it every single day. Motzei Shabbos, we learn after Rebbeinu Tamzman. A half hour later, we learn again for an hour. And Baruch Hashem, we're pretty much up to date. And I can say that the level of learning has been tremendous because everybody that's there has been participating. I see them, they see me. And it's, as they say, almost as good as being there in a room. It's never the same quite, but under the circumstances, this has been going very, very strong. And I know from all the Magid shiur that I've talked to, that this is just a shared experience because all of them have been working very hard, whether it's using Zoom or whether it's on the telephone, one way or another, they've been keeping pace with this, and I believe that the level of learning has really not suffered, and in many ways it has continued to even get better. I also want to mention that there's some things that you can do with when you're on this online environment that we can't necessarily do. I want to just show you that one of the things Eli Goldberg, who's also Magid Shiur, and I think he's on this call as well, told me about an online version of the Pirush Chai, and if anybody needs it, please, I'm going to tell the people in the Aguda how to get it to you. You can really go to HebrewBooks.com, I think it is, or .org, and there you can find the Pirush Chai and Masechta Shabbos. You can download it, and then if you're on, you can share screen, like I'm going to try to do just right this second. Okay, give me a second. Okay, this is from the daf that we're now dealing with, and you can go to any daf, to any page, and share it with the oilam. You can point out things, and they can see it, and then you just click and get right back to where you were. So that's just something that's just a useful tool that I found. I just want to say one more thing, that you find many people who have commented, it was especially true in the beginning, that they were criticizing Klal Yisrael, and they start giving reasons why this great Nisayan has been thrown upon us because of various tamim, which I don't want to go into, okay, that people doing, not doing, etc. I want to just say a story that I had with Rav Pam many years ago. One time, Michael Rothschild, who runs the Chafetz Chaim Heritage Foundation, does an incredible job, asked me to go with him to invite Rav Pam to speak on his Tisha B'Av event, they call it, which is seen by more than 50,000 people, and that Rav Pam should speak at that. So we went, we met with Rav Pam early in the morning. That's when I used to go to him right after Shachris, and we came in, and Michael said that we'd like to invite the Rebbe to speak on this event, and we have so many problems in Klal Yisrael, and we know that there's always a problem that is caused because people speak Lashon Hara, and therefore that's part of what Chafetz Chaim Heritage Foundation does, and that's what he should speak about. So Rav Pam said, you can never go ahead and pinpoint and say that A is caused by B, that because you talk Lashon Hara, therefore these tragedies are happening. He said, if you learn Sha'ar HaGemul from the Ramban, you see that things can, definitely there are actions that come from, there are results that come from the actions that you do. And therefore, of course, you have to do and be mechazik in everything, but you can't say that the Nisayan came because people are speaking Lashon Hara, the Nisayan came because people are talking in shul, or whatever the case may be. Of course, it may be that the einish for Nisayan will happen in your lifetime or Doris later, and the same thing is true with the schar. Somebody wants to find this to say that a Kodesh Baruch Hu is not a vending machine. You don't put something in and expect to get something to come out right away. So what I think that we have to look at it, not in terms of what to cause, what this is, but we have to look at what we can do to be Mechazik Klal Yisrael. And I think that the Magid Shiur especially are doing a tremendous job in continuing the Shiurim, helping the people continue their learning, and Ashreichem to everyone. And here we will try to hear from certain very well-noted Magid Shiur and find, exactly what their, let me just get my introductions. Give me one more second. Okay, and the first person that we'd like to invite is Reb Shmuel David Friedman. He's been giving Daf Yomi Shiurim and Shiurim in general. Last week when we spoke, we heard that he's giving Shiurim in the morning and at noon and at night and late at night. And he's a very popular Magid Shiur. And he's also the Mechaber of State Seifim, which is on all of Shas, tremendous. Each one is a major volume. And I'm sure if you call him, he'll tell you where you can get it. Reb Shmuel David, let's be honored by having you address us.
Shalom Aleichem to everybody. Can you hear me?
Very clearly. Go ahead.
Ayashikoyach to all the Askunen, to Rav Gedalia, the Bavrum Nissen, and to everybody else who's involved. And also to my son, Reb Mendele, my neighbor, who set up this computer here for me, something that I've never done before. First, I would like to add a word to what Yedidi Reb Gedalia said about the Tzaddik Rav Pam. I had a special hanua from your words, because I think that the Rebbeinu Shel Olam, with this machle hamizdabeket, that is really something that the whole world is suffering from, he has shown himself where nobody knows exactly what's going on. Nobody has any idea what really should be done. There are those that are saying you need to put on masks. Then there are those experts who say a mask is not good. There's all types of different days. And only the Rebbeinu Shel Olam who brought it, hapeh she'usar, hapeh shehitir. And likewise, nobody knows what we have to do to get rid of this problem. And also, I myself have been thinking about this nikudah, that there's a lot of people who are saying, this is why it came, and this is why it came, change this, change that. It's always good to take a Kabbalah. In fact, there's a very big tzaddik in Williamsburg. His name is the Kalef Rebbe, Rabbi Yitzchok ben Rezel. He has ALS. He writes a Gillion every single week with his eyes. There's a tzaddik who lives in Flatbush who learns in the Koidel of Beis HaTalmud. His name is Nuchem Lehman. He created this computer, which people who have this terrible machle ALS can speak with their eyes. They look at the letters. I'm sure all of you have heard of it. And what I wanted to say was that the Heilige Kalef Rebbe says that there's a Medrash Tanchime. He brings a Medrash Tanchime in his last week's Gillion, in Parshas Tzav, that this man Beis Hamikdash Hayukayim, if somebody was saved, and he has to bring, he had a nes, Albu Tzarichem Lahoidois, so he had to bring a Korban Toide. Today, since there's no Korban Toide, he should make a Kabbalah. This is a gewaltige Sache, making Kabbalahs. I don't want to go into a list of Kabbalahs that I would like to suggest. One of them that I have been thinking about myself is to keep track of the Meya Bruchois, because we have a Makar in Tanakh that the Meya Bruchois brought Vatay Utzar Hamagefu. And I think we can add to that the Sheish Mitzvahs Timidios. But my job now is to talk to Magid Shiur of Daf Yomi. So I only have about 5 minutes. About 20 years ago, a neighbor of mine, Reb Chaim Stern, a Tairiyit, here in Borough Park, Reb Chaim Stern from Borough Park, he called me on a Friday if I have room for a couple that was supposed to come to him for the weekend. And it turns out his children want to come and he doesn't have the extra room. And I told him with the greatest pleasure. And at my door shows up the Biyala Rebbe and his Rebbetzin. It was a big Talmud Chochem. He made a lot of Svurim, Mevasev Toiv. I had the Shiur to have a long discussion with him. And one of the things he told me was that just like when you give tzedukah, the ikir is that the only got the tzedukah, as we know the Gemara says in a few places. He said the same thing when it comes to limit ha-Torah. What is Torah Lishma? Torah Lishma is if you're learning with somebody else. When you learn with somebody else, when you're giving a shiur, it doesn't matter what your kavunas are. You are giving somebody else Torah, that's Torah Lishma. And according to the Chaim Volozhiner, it's like you learned it 20 times. And if you give 2 shiurim, it's like you learned it 40 times. And the Gemara says in 5 places, Tanamene Abum Zimne. In 3 places, the Gemara adds, V'dumelei kamanda mancharei b'kisir. Now, there was a very big Godel who was nifter. His shloshim was a few days ago, the Novominsker Rebbe. Everybody who is involved in Agudas Yisrael, the whole Klal Yisrael, is familiar with the Novominsker Rebbe. I read an article about the Rebbe, and he said that as a Rosh Yeshiva, the one word which was the most important word to him was Geschmack. To give a Geschmack for the Talmidim. And Lamaisa, every single day we daven v'harev nu. And I heard from my Rebbe, the Heilige Baal Shevet HaLevi, that he said there's only one mitzvah from the Taryag mitzvahs that we say at Tefillah, it should be sweet. And that's the mitzvah of Limud HaTorah, because by Torah, there's a mitzvah of Yigisibam Yoimam V'loinu. You can't do something for an extended period of time unless you feel that it's sweet. In my humble opinion, the job of a Magid Shiur, whether it's Daf Yomi, every Magid Shiur, his job is to bring the sweetness of the Torah to the Makshivei Hashir. That the people who are coming to a Shiur, they should be anxious to come so they can hear a sweet word. And you must start every Shiur with at least one story. And as I told Reb Gedalia, I was going to start my little talk with a nigun. I wanted to sing. Because you see, I know that's different. But if you do what everybody else does, you have to do not what everybody else does. And I'm going to listen to Reb Gedalia, who understood that he would prefer that I don't start singing on this session. But I was going to sing this song about Rab Shimon. Because, you know, there was a big Magid right now in the times of Rab Shimon and the times of Rab Akiva, there was a big Magid. The Remu says that it stopped. It stopped on Lamed Gimel Bo'omer. Rabbi Isai, make a cheshbon. About 800 Talmidim of Rab Akiva died every single day. That's about what it was in New York when this Magid started. Now, if 800 of their Chaverim died every day, why didn't they stop doing what they did? That the Gemara says they were dying. If 800 of the Chaverim died every day, why didn't they stop? What do you think, Reb Gedalia? A good question.
Because if they would have realized that that was the cause, it would be one thing.
That's it. This is the teretz, Rabbi Isai. This is exactly what Reb Gedalia said before. The teretz is that the Gemara, which is Riach HaKodesh, in Masechta Yevumis, the Gemara is telling us that the reason why they died is because Shalom Hagi Kubet Zeh. But they didn't know that. They didn't know why this is happening. It's like us, we don't know why this is happening. If the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva didn't know, Avada, we don't know. I was going to sing this song, Yuda Kol Hanisturois, Devurov Oisim Peirois, Vital Kamu Gezeirois, Adoineini Bar Yechoy. We're asking Reb Shimon why the Koyach to be Mevatel Gezeirois. It's a Gemara in Daf Yudzayin in Me'ila. I want to say there's a lot of different ways how to bring the sweetness of the Torah to your Makshivei Hashir. One is by telling them something very fascinating at the beginning of the Shiur, asking a question, a fascinating question, and not answering it until the end of the Shiur. Starting with the story, but not ending the story until the end of the Shiur. When I heard that Gedalia mentioned that Tzaddik Rav Pam, what a tzaddik Rav Pam was. He was a Ish Kudish. I would like to tell you what I heard in the last few days from a Rosh Koilel in Toronto, who happens to be my son. He told me that there's a Talmid Chochem in Toronto by the name of Ramoshe Kanner, that he said the following story, that a boy in Mesrifte Torah V'das, he found a $10 bill, and he came to ask Rav Pam what he should do. Rav Pam told him, Al Pi Halacha, you're allowed to keep it. But don't go running to buy something with it right away. Wait a few days. While the person who lost it is still having tzar, don't go enjoy this $10 bill. Think about this musik in a heilige Yid. By the way, Reb Gedalia, I have a raya to this from a chinuch. There's a mitzvah tuf kif dalad, and a mitzvah tuf kif hey, that the Shevet Levi, Kehanim and Leviim, according to the chinuch, are not allowed to participate in the spoils of a war, or in Eretz Yisrael when they were kovish Eretz Yisrael. Says the chinuch, because they are Mesharsei Hashem. The Rambam says today, Shevet Levi is the Bnei Torah, and they shouldn't be enjoying spoils that leiv achar doyeg aleim, that somebody is sad over it. Now, Boisai, I think this may be a good Kabbalah to go in the ways of Rav Pam. They never do anything that gives another person tzar. Stay away from being mitzar, any yid. And if you are a wealthy individual, don't ever say no to anybody. Don't ever say, Himptonly, wait, call me back. I'll let you know when I'll be happy to talk to you. You know what Nuchanish Gamzi did when he said Himptonly to a Uni in Tainis Daf Chuf Aleph? Look it up. All he did was say Himptonly, wait until I take off from my chamoy and then I'll give you. The Rabbi Sai, there's a Yid in Toronto.
David, we're going to have to speed up a little bit. Okay.
I should finish?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay.
I'll just say that Avrami Reichman, he's one of the Tzadikei Hador. I don't know of anybody else. There must be others, but I think he may be the only one that I know of, who always has in his pocket checks that are signed for different amounts and cash. Anybody who comes over to him, no matter where, on the street, in shul, knocks on his door, on the spot, here you are. I think this is something that the Gevirim of the world, and by the way, it's Ach Shedure. I have a son who is Isaac in these different funds that have families. And I understand that a lot of Yidden are giving for every fund. Gevirim are giving $5,000 for every fund. Rabban Tzien Strasser had gepasken that anyone over 60 who had this disease and he's alive, he should bench goimu. The least he can do is give to these funds. Yashikoyach, thank you for listening.
Yashikoyach. Okay. 1 second. All right. The next, we have the honor of having Rav Magaretin. He's a Rav in one of the largest shuls. Yitzchak Magaretin is the Rav in one of the largest shuls in, and is a Mesa Paisik in the Midwest region and in Cleveland. And he gives many other shiurim, and he's a very, very popular Daf Yomi in Cleveland. Rav Magaretin.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Again, as was mentioned many times here, nobody knows why this Gzeira is here, but nobody asked us whether we want it or not. We have to deal with what is. Chaim Volozhin tells us in the Gemara that if somebody had Misharai Yishisurim Ba'amal of Yifashmish B'maisav, Pishmish V'leimotza, Yitla B'bitl Taira. Chaim Volozhin says, Manashach, what is that Yitla B'bitl Taira? So they say over the name of Chaim Volozhin that every Avera, every Yisurim goes to a certain limb in the body that stands for either a mitzvah or an Avera that a person didn't do or did do. And if he's Pishmish V'leimotza means that limb in the body that Avera is miyuchas to, if he didn't find that he has a weakness in that area, Yitla B'bitl Taira, because Bitl Taira affects every part of the body. It's like the brain that affects every part of the body physically. Bitl Taira is the Davar Ruchni that affects every part of the body. So since we have no Hasaga, we're not Nevi'im, no B'nai Nevi'im, we are in Tanoam or Amaroim that can identify and say that this Einish comes because of whatever. So one thing we know is that Bittul Taira, Chizuk and Limud HaTaira is definitely an antidote. Is definitely an antidote to whatever Einish we need. It definitely will help that we should be able, the Rebbeinu should help, that we should be able to end this Magid as fast as it came, to leave right away. In my Daf Yomi Shiur, which I gave live, I had 1 or 2 people that called in on a regular basis, but it was a live shiur like most other shurim, or probably overwhelming amount of shurim, and we had to make a switch. We switched to a combination of Zoom and phone. Most people Zoom in, some people call in, and we do the shiur the same time. We did it every night at 9 o'clock. And I found a few things. Number one is that I found that more people joined that weren't coming live, joined. I guess for them it's easier to do it from home, and they joined the shiur. So in fact, I have more attendees now. I lost a few that don't do Zoom, they didn't want to do it that way, but I gained more than I lost. There's more people coming to the shiur now than were coming before. It was also, I see a gewaldige dedication from the people that come to the shiur. It's a chizuk for me. It's a chizuk for me. Because Pesach, for instance, usually on Shabbos and Yom Tov, I give shiur during the afternoon before Mincha. Obviously, that was not possible. So it was a choice. Either tell the people you have to make these dafen up by yourself, or catch up, learn more than a daf a day to make up what was lost over Yom Tov. So the second days, it ended up, Tuesday was Erev Yom Tov. So Tuesday night, there was no shiur. Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night. So Mitzvah Shabbos, we walked in, we're 5 blot behind. If Mitzvah Shabbos, it would have been 5 blot. And everybody was masking to come to the shiur, even though it would be longer, and we would do more than a daf a day. Baruch Hashem, it took 2 weeks. But over 2 weeks, we were able to catch up to be together where Daf Yomi is holding. Mitzvah Shabbos in Cleveland is a half an hour later than it is on the East Coast. Rabbeinu Tam's man, this past Mitzvah Shabbos was 9:45. Give the shiur. I gave the shiur at 10:15. Everybody came. As it gets later, there's a talk now that maybe we'll make the shiur Friday afternoon. Make the shiur Friday afternoon, so those people, it's hard, Mitzvah Shabbos gets later. Mitzvah Shabbos gets as late as 10:16 here. To have a shiur at 10:45 at night is rather hard. So we might move it to Friday afternoon. But I saw a gewaltige dedication by those who come to the Daf Yomi. They're taking it very seriously. This commitment they made at the beginning of this new machzer, which an Nisayan was thrown in front of them, like a Verlich and Nisayan, they're overcoming it. They're learning the Daf. They're into the Daf. They ask questions. They want to understand. All those things that we took for granted in a live shiur are now coming through even in the Zoom shiur. So it's a gewaltige chizuk for me as a Magid shiur. And again, I unfortunately went through COVID, and Baruch Hashem, I came out healthy. And I always wonder, I don't know, but maybe it's the schus of being a mezaka harabim. Maybe the fact that I give a shiur, that other people are learning Torah, maybe that's the schus that carried me through. I don't know. But everybody that's a Magid shiur has that schus. You're being a Malamed Torah, you're doing the work of the Rabbeinu Shalom, being Malamed Torah Lama Yisrael. You're teaching Yidden Torah. That's a schus that a person has. I heard that Rabbi Yankov said that the reason he had Arichas Yamim, again, I didn't hear it from him straight, is because he dedicated his life to doing for the Klal. He didn't live on his own chusim past a certain age. It was because of the Klal. Again, I didn't hear it from him. I don't vouch that he necessarily, but that's what I was told. Any Magid shiur, anybody that's saying shiur for Yidden, teaching Torah to Yidden, clarifying Torah for Yidden, making Yidden understand Torah, love Torah, be immersed in Torah. Anybody that does that has a schus harabim by. And it's a gewaldige thing to have a schus harabim, because me, Aymar, who says which schus we have that we're here and we're able to continue being Marbitz Torah. My brachas to every Magid shiur. We're all Marbitzei Torah. We're all passing on Torah from the Tanoim and the Ameroim and the Rishayim and the Achronim to other people. The Rebbeinu Shem should help us all to be mechazik ourselves. Understand that it's this limud HaTorah that keeps the world going. It's limud HaTorah, L'malei Torah, L'moi Berisi, which goes on Torah, Yaiman V'lai L'chukas Shemayim V'aretz Le'samti. We are keeping the world going. And we are keeping the world going by our limud HaTorah, by our abatzas HaTorah, and therefore, Rebbeinu Shem should give us all kayak to be able to continue this abatzas HaTorah till we can go back live and do it the way it's supposed to be. Seeing the Magid shiur, seeing the Talmidim. Hatzlacha Rabbah.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Yitzchak. I'd like now to call on Rav Kalman Frisch. He gives a Daf Yomi shiur in Lakewood to over 50 people, and it's growing. And you'll hear from him how the ways he's been enhancing his shiur and gets everybody to be very much involved. Rav Kalman, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Just a disclaimer. I'm not a rabbi, and I'm not especially in relative to the Magidei shiur that are on this call. So I say this not mitoy chanivas, simply as a disclaimer in case I say something that you don't agree with. You can simply delete it and don't pay attention to it. So Baruch Hashem, as the other Magidei Shurim have said, There's definitely those that got much stronger from the moving online kind of a shiur, but we do have to admit that there are definitely those for whom this move was difficult and perhaps they fell out completely. And I definitely, Baruch Hashem, we have a big crowd and a lot of younger people. So I did get a lot of calls from people saying, you know, I'm still with it, I'm still with the program, but it's definitely a lot harder. When can we get back together? And, you know, they were definitely waiting to have a normal face-to-face shiur. So what could we do to make things better? I don't have a lot of unique ideas for the Corona shiurim, but in general, some of the hatzlacha from our shiur has been taking together many things that were said here and a couple of more. So as Rabbi Friedman mentioned, starting the shiur with an interesting story, with an interesting question, perhaps halacha l'maaseh, a good question that's related to the daf, definitely gets everybody's interest. I use a sefer that's by Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein. It's called the Chashukei Chemed, which is on the Gemara, which takes halacha l'maaseh shaylas on the Gemara. So we can open sometimes a shiur with that or a middle. Many times during the day, I'll post a picture of something that we're going to be learning about, either as a type of animal or type of keli, and start a chat discussion during the day. Does anybody know what this is? And people will start talking between themselves to try to figure it out. And obviously, it picks their interest a little bit as to what's coming later in the day. We definitely, just from technical standpoint, Aguda puts out every day some videos and review material, which we forward to our shiur members, and people find it to be useful. Again, I stopped sending it at one point, and I immediately got requests. Where are the with, you know, each person, some people from the videos, some people from the different types of review materials that they have. We also bring in extra Magidei shiurim during the week. This has been something even before Corona. We've been doing this for a long time. Typically on Thursday nights, we get together in the home of one of the Mishtatfei Shiur, and we have food, chalent and kugel, and we bring a local rav who gives the halacha l'maaseh shiur on Inyonei Hadaf. We've been doing this, Baruch Hashem, for over a year already. Every Thursday night, we learn halacha l'maaseh because the people in the shiur have been asking me for a long time, whenever we learn a Gemara that's somewhat related to halacha l'maaseh, they ask, do we paskin like that? And I'm not a posik, so I always feel bad telling them, you know, Gemara is not halacha l'maaseh. It's a shame people are coming here to learn Torah and they can't even walk away with something that they can apply to their lives. So we started this Thursday night program where a local rav will come. We prepare him the topics during the week of what we're learning in the Daf Yomi, and we'll go through it, you know, carefully, and we can everybody walks away with a real halacha l'maaseh from the Daf Yomi. Definitely elevated the learning. We've also started now a Sunday program where we bring in right now we have Rabbi Wickler, Dr. Rabbi Wickler, who comes on once a week and discusses Shalom Bayis and Chinuch Habonim. We try to make the shiur be a lot more than just the daf. We want people to feel connected. It becomes a chabura, not just where you come in, you learn the daf, because sometimes the daf is difficult and sometimes people fall out. And many times these other things is what keeps people in, and then eventually they can chap themselves back into the Daf Yomi. I will say that we have chalent and kugel going on Thursday night, even now during Corona, Baruch Hashem, we did not stop. We have some dedicated volunteers from the shiur that drove around. We split it up by zones in Lakewood because we had a big distribution. But Thursday night, 8:45, there's a knock on my door, and hot chalent and kugel was delivered. Again, it's not the food, and I know people are not coming for that, but it definitely, having kinds of events like this, having such little things, keeps people engaged and there's a certain fear of missing out. There's always something going on by us, and that definitely helps keep people in. I do want to add just one akuda, if I have still a minute, which is the program that we began already 2 years ago or more, which is with having tests, a weekly test on the Daf Yomi. It originally started as an idea that I wanted to do just for one Masechta, the Masechtas Chulin from the last cycle. And I started writing a weekly test with 10 or 20 questions for the Olam. The tests are in English. They're Gemara, basic Gemara, Pshat, no trick questions. I'm not trying to get anyone. I give it out to my Olam on Thursday night, and they can keep it, and they give it back Sunday night after the Shiur. The test was tremendously successful in that it completely changed our Shiur. It really, not everybody does it. I will say there are those that say, I can't do tests. We do, we try each Masechta to get more and more people to join, and definitely the Kinna Seifrim helps because we have rewards for those that take the Bechinas. But it changed the learning completely, because it used to be you come to Daf Yomi Shiur, you sit down, you learn, you get it, good, you don't get it, okay, not so good. But even when you learned, you were learning just to be Yaitza. You did your hour and you went on. Now you're learning it to know it, because you know that come Sunday, you're going to sit down and take that test. You don't want to be learning 7 blot on a Sunday. It just takes too long. So people are learning completely different the whole week, knowing that they're going to take a test. We do put together a really nice matan schora at the end of the test for those that make it through the whole program. We did some very serious prizes and rewards in the past. I don't want to announce it. But I will say that for those that are able to afford it, and for those that can raise funds from others, I think this is the most transformative koil in the world. I will tell you honestly that people in the Shiur have told me how their lives changed when they started taking a test. They used to come, they were part of an olam. Now they're taking a test, they're learning seriously. People that told me they used to go to sleep every night with their smartphone in their bed, they're now going to sleep with the Gemara in their bed because they have to make sure that they're able to pass that. And not only that, their families get involved. I have one guy in the Shiur that his son has to sign his test every week. That was the deal that they made. Just like he would have to sign his son's test, now his son says, I want to see your test every week so I can sign it. He's a real mechayev that when he got less than 100, he came back to fight about it. No, this is not fair. And it definitely transformed the Shiur. Baruch Hashem, I stopped it. It was taking up a lot of my time, the test, and the Olam came back with tinus, that they wanted to continue it. So today we hired somebody, a Talmud Chacham in Lakewood, that writes the test and he marks the tests. And Baruch Hashem, it looks like this is here to stay. And this has been here to stay even during Corona. There's a shopping bag outside my door in the front where people drop off the tests. For those that can't email it, they can pick up tests. And this definitely added a big chizuk. So for all the Magid Shiurim, whoever wants, I'll gladly share the material with you. And hopefully it'll bring a chazaka satire.
Thank you very, very much. Okay, now we got some questions. The questions that were submitted, some of them need responses, which is not necessarily from the panelists, but I think the members of the Torah projects will respond in terms of certain types of resources. Okay, let's start with the following question. How interactive should the Shiur be when you do it live or on Zoom? So my own experience is that my Shiur is very, very interactive. I don't have 50 people, but by us, it's there. And when we're doing it on what I call my GoToMeeting, which is the equivalent of Zoom, sometimes when it gets out of hand, I threaten that I'm going to put everybody on mute. And so far, I haven't done that. But Baruch Hashem, it's interactive. But I'd like to hear what other people have to say. Rabbi Yitzchak, what do you think?
I never say no to a question. Some dafim engender a lot of conversation, so it goes longer. And some, aren't so conversational. There are not that many questions. It goes shorter, right? Never tell a person they can't ask a question, because that's their chiyas. That's their involvement in the Shiur. Telling them that they can't ask a question is like, I never do that. I never tell them come back later. Unless it's off the subject completely, I'll say we'll talk about it afterwards. But if it's on the daf, or about the daf, or understanding the daf, or a svar on the daf, I never tell a person that. If it takes 5 minutes longer because of that, so be it. And if we have a zman of Myra that we have to get to, so we'll be 4 lines behind or 5 lines behind. That's the way I approach it.
Reb Kalman?
To a certain extent, it definitely, it comes, I definitely hear this from my chevra all the time, that when we allow the questions to go too long, we start losing guys. People lose their train of thought. So definitely it's open. The share has always been a open. I actually don't have, since we use GoToMeeting, I can't even mute everybody. They can just unmute themselves. They don't have that Zoom feature. So everybody asks in, but it's understood that at a certain point, if I feel I see people are starting to go the other direction, I say we'll continue afterwards.
Shmuel David, do you have shaylas in the middle of the share? Oh, we don't hear you. Hello?
Okay, you hear me now?
Yeah, now we hear you. Yeah.
In my case, even when I'm giving a live shear, the shear is on Kol Halushin. And the Oilam knows that there's several phones because I'm on several systems. So there can't be too many questions because people are listening all over the world. And it's going to be an issue. But before I went on Kol Halushin, I never had a problem with shaylas. Loi hakabden melamed. There's only a situation where once in a while, I mean, I don't have this anymore, but many years ago, I had this one nudnik who didn't stop asking questions. And that, you need to figure out a way. I mean, I was mispallel that he should go to somebody else's shir and the Rebbeinu Shloim listen to my tefillas. But, you know, if you don't have a nudnik and everybody is just trying to understand, I see no reason why people shouldn't be able to ask questions. But, of course, everything has
It's limits.
yeah, nahara pashte. It all depends on the situation. When you have 50 people sitting by the shir, you can't have too many questions. You won't have a shir.
Okay, somebody asked that if a shir is supposed to start at a certain time and not everybody is there yet. They're getting coffee or this or that. Should you wait for them or do you start on the exact time anyway? Okay, let's start with you, Shmuel David.
Since my shiurim today are on Kol Haloshon, so they're always on time. I start exactly, I sign in a minute or two before it's supposed to start, and when the time comes, I push the button play, and because I know people are sitting and waiting for it. So it's not your shit. And I also try to end on time. I know of a Magid Shiur in Borough Park 25, maybe 30 years ago, who said a Daf Yomi Shiur, and perhaps it was the biggest shiur in the world. He started with 300 people sitting there, and I used to go to that shiur myself. It was very late at night. After a few years, he was down to 1 million because he started coming 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late, 15 minutes late, 20 minutes late. And by the time he came 25 minutes late, most of the people left. So I think time is very important. I know my Rebbe Rav Wosner, when Shachris was 9 o'clock, when he saw, 7 o'clock in the morning was Shachris, when he walked in, you knew it was 7 o'clock.
Kalman, what about you? Do you start on time?
We generally give the oilam a few minutes to speak to each other. Again, it is a chevra, so people coming in after a day of not seeing each other. So we do give a few minutes, but I think we have share at 9 p.m. So by 10 after 9 usually we start. But I think it's really like Rabbi Friedman said, the Magid Shiur will really set the program. If you're there on time, the oilam will generally shtel su.
Rabbi Yitzchak?
We always start on time. I find that if I didn't start on time, people would come later. There are people that have to walk in 5 minutes late. So they will walk in 5 minutes late. If you start 5 after 9, they'll start coming 10 after 9. 9 o'clock is 9 o'clock. Everybody knows it. And those who are machshavit are there. They'll be the latecomers, and once in a while ba'inus and once in a while baratzim. But if you don't start on time, then you lose the whole sense of urgency. So why did you start 3 minutes after? Why didn't you start 8 minutes after? 9 o'clock is 9 o'clock. We start on time. And as was mentioned before, we finish on time also.
All right, we'll go back, starting from you again. What do you think about encouraging people in the shir to take over the shir every now and then? Margaret?
Never done it before. I do it when I have to, when I'm stuck and I have to leave town. See, that's something we have in the Midwest that most people don't have in the East. When a person has a chasana, well, this is true in the East also. If you have a chasana, you miss your night shir. But if you have a chasana in the Midwest, you miss 2 or 3 night shir because of travel. So you have to get a substitute. So once in a while, I would ask one of the participants to be the substitute. But besides for that, I don't do it. Again, it's because I rely on my clarity and my explanation. It's my achrayas. For me to ask somebody else to do it, that means I'm taking achrayas that it'll be done. I don't necessarily feel comfortable with that. So I don't do that, no.
Rav Kalman.
There's definitely been times that I needed to have somebody take me over. We do have a member of the Shiur who's sort of the designated Malamokim. Though I do want to mention that we have a WhatsApp group for Magid Shiur in Lakewood specifically that I started, that Baruch Hashem has 20 Magid Shiur, which one of the main purposes that I created it was that when my replacement is not available, to have a different Magid Shiur be able to take me over when I can't make it. Baruch Hashem, that group is become a beautiful place for sharing Divrei Torah and resources. And I did get a replacement Magid Shiur the last time that I was stuck. I was able to get somebody from there. But in general, we have one guy of the Shiur that does take over.
Shmuel David, do you ever have anybody take over for you?
There is a tzaddik in Borough Park by the name of Reb Aaron Finkelstein.
Yeah.
And you know him?
Yeah.
Okay, so he basically, on his own, became the person to go to when you need a Mamala Mukaim. So when he needs a Mamala Mukaim for a different share, he would call me. And when I need a Mamala Mukim, I call him and he would call whatever Magid Shiur is available. And that works out very well. I also have someone by one of the Shiurim, Choshev, that if I sometimes am someplace and I see I'm not going to make it to the Shiur, even without him being prepared, he could sit down and give the Shiur. Very Choshev. One more thing, in 1997, I was giving 2 shiurim in the morning, 5:30 and 6:30, and I found myself not to have any koyach, I asked Rav Wozner then what I should do. He told me, give up 1 shiur. 1 shiur is enough. So one of the participants of the shiur, a very chashuv yid by the name of the Shimshon Zitwer, he was participating in the shiur. I asked him to take over, and since then he's been giving the shiur. He's on his 3rd machzir that he's been giving the shiur. I think it's very important to give other people opportunities. There's a very popular Magid Shiur in Borough Park. His name is Rebbe Eliezer Nissen Rubin. He gives today 3 or 4 shiurim. I think he makes a nice panusa from it. He met me on the street about 10 years ago, and he asked me, please, if you ever leave and you need a Magid Shiur, I would like to give the shiur. So I told the Gabbai in our shul, Shomer Amuna, the Meir Simche, that he should call this younger man. I took his number. The next time I left, he called him. And the rest is history. Today he's a famous Magid Shiur. I think it's important to give the young chevra a chance.
Okay. Yeah, very good. In my shiur, I have one person who is usually the one who takes over, especially in the summer when I'm in the mountains. He does it over the weekends. And if he's not there, there are plenty of other people in the shiur who are all capable of doing it. And we've had it that over times different people took over. I try very hard not to miss giving the shiur ever. So even when I also had the coronavirus and I had a long number of days where I had reasonably high temperature, I made it my business to be able to prepare and to just get out, give the shiur. I then went back into bed. And I think that basically has helped me recover from it without any question. And then, but Baruch Hashem, I have people in the shiur. If I can't make it and the substitute can't make it, they're all good at being able to do that. Okay. Now, I know Kalman answered about giving incentives. Does anybody else have any ideas about incentives to people? I know that another one of the shiurim in the shul, I give the shiur in Rabbi Yisrael Reisman shul in the morning. There are other shiurim there also. And some of them the Aguda provides a certificate when you finish. They do that, or they print out ones for each one of the Masechtas, and the people there enjoy it. We don't do it in my shiur, but I know that there are other people who do it. Is there anybody else? And again, Rav Kalman, I know some of his incentives. He didn't want to mention them, but they are very impressive incentives that are given out. And what about Rabbi Yitzchak?
No incentives.
Yeah. And Reb Shmuel David also not, and he can't give.
The incentive is to participate in the Siyam Hashas.
Oh, that's right.
That's the incentive.
And that's a big incentive.
To learn a mitzvah at least once every second day and make a Siyam on Tayag mitzvahs. And then there's another incentive to learn one Mishnah a day, at least 20 days out of the month, and you'll finish Zeruim and Taharis. You'll make a real Siyam Hashas.
Okay.
Any Magid Shiur who only learns the daf, I think that it's kedai to take 5 minutes and add something. Add the Sefer, Shmiras Halushim, add a different Sefer. By our Shiur, in the Meshach from all the years, we've, Baruch Hashem, finished many, many Surim, and Tayag Mitzvahs, I'm looking forward to making a big Siyam in the near future. How many people know Tayag Mitzvahs? The Yisoid of Kol HaTorah Kula is Tayag Mitzvahs. It takes 1 or 2 minutes to just give a short lesson about the mitzvah. I think it's very important.
Good. We're just about ready to finish. Anybody else who has questions, and if you send them in, we'll try to answer them individually. I'll just add one vart. Basically, what Reb Shmuel David alluded to in terms of making Kabbalas. There's a ma'aser that Reb Meir Chodosh, who was the Mashgiach in Hebron, who went through the pogrom that happened in Hebron in 1929, I believe. And he was one of 2 people, I think, who survived that. He made believe he was dead. He laid under a certain, he laid under the other people who were dead, made believe he was dead. And he stayed there for almost the whole 24 hours because he was afraid to come out till he was sure that nobody was around. The other person who survived after a number of months asked him what, he says that this happened so many months ago, and it becomes, you begin to forget about it. There was a tremendous nest that they were rescued, and therefore, but now it's a little bit later, and the people just, you don't have the same hergish that you had at the time when it happened. So Reb Chodesh said that the reason that's true is because you didn't change anything. When you go through such magefas, so you go through a pogrom, you go through that, and you didn't make anything, changes in your own behavior, then you forget about it. And therefore, you have to make a Kabbalah to do something that you're going to change. And then every time you do that, therefore, you're going to remember that you're doing this, and that reminds you about the fact that you were rescued, that you did survive this machla, that you did see through a time when there were thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people that died. And I had somebody in my shiur that was nifter, and I had a brother-in-law that was nifter, and I had friends that were nifter, and I know so many people, and so many other people know them as well. And we have to be very thankful that Baruch Hashem, we made it through this. And therefore, as Reb Shmuel David said, making a Kabbalah is something that's going to keep this at the forefront of what we remember, even as if the Bezrat Hashem the Mehera that this passes. I thank all of the participants on the panel. I thank everybody that has tuned in, and let the schus of Limud Torah, the schus of continuing to learn Daf Yomi, help us get through this terrible time and get through and be able to be back to sharing and hearing B'suras Tovos and Simchas by all of us. Thank you very, very much.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Kol tov, kol tov.
Shkoyach.